Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be breaking down the Showdown Super Bowl slate, right? I've actually been pretty excited for this because I wanted to see how much money Draftkings was going to put into it. I thought maybe around $500,000, right? $1 million into a Showdown slate. Didn't even have to qualify for this, but the catch is there's over 300,000 people in it, so it's going to be pretty tough to knock down $1 million or maybe anywhere even in six figures by yourself, based on the fact that there's so many people in here. Welcome to the channel, guys. If you have not been here before, my name is Sal Vetri, and drop down in the comments if this is your first time here. I want to formally introduce myself to you. If you're a returning guest, drop down in the comments. Let me know that you're back. Let me know what you like the most about my channel. I want to know what people are liking the most so I can keep expanding on that content, giving you the best content you want. We've slowly started producing sports betting content, more so not in the these are my picks, locks of the week stuff, but more so educating you, maybe get some fun prop picks, things like that in there. But obviously always remember it's your money that you're putting on the line. If you do sports gamble, I don't want to influence your picks at all. So same thing with DFS. So I just made this video, first look video, and I didn't have this mic on, right? I have a little lavalier mic on, just trying to switch up some things from my shotgun mic, which just sits on top of the camera, just get some better audio closer to my mouth. And I didn't have the mic on, so that sucked. Filmed about 25 minutes of good Showdown quality. So this won't be a first look, right? I just did a first look, and it's got no audio. So instead of giving you a silent film, I'm gonna go through it again with the audio. Hopefully this time I triple checked it, got the camera going. We're recording on everything, the screen, the camera. So this might be a little bit shorter because I can go through it. But biggest thing with Showdown slates, and right now go down in the description below and let me know, or go down in the description below and make sure you download the free PDF for DraftKings, DFS, whatever it is, strategy, because it talks about Showdown a lot in there. And it's completely free. I'm trying to hone my writing skills, like I've said in the past, selfishly enough, but I want to give you guys that content, see what you think about it. Make sure to reach out to me. Let me know what you think about it. It'll help you with the Showdown slate. But the two biggest things that I point out in there, leaving money on the table, and in this slate where there's 300,000 people, and yes, there's going to be a lot more sharps in it because it's a Super Bowl, it's fun, even if it's not optimal or profitable to be playing Showdown slates, it's fun. You're going to use your lineup generators. If you're somebody who does that, there's going to be more people with lineup generators in this because it's just such a huge field and there's a big amount of money on the line, that it's going to be hard to find an edge because those lineup generators, what they do is they sometimes don't get all the rules right, and they'll throw in some random guys like we saw Griffin, the Saints' third-string tight end. He scored a touchdown. Not a lot, but 0.1% of the field has him. In a big field, it's a couple hundred people maybe have that person. So it's hard to get somebody or get a lineup that nobody has, but I'm going to try and help you get to that position. And what the public's going to do, yes, you have a lot of these sharp players come in, but there's going to be way more public players, which just means people who bet with their emotions and don't bet based on numbers. They just bet for fun. They don't really care what happens to their money for the most part. They hope that they win, but they're probably not going to. Watching the Super Bowl, there's going to be a ton more people playing DFS, especially $1 million Showdown slate. It's going to entice a lot of people. What they're not going to do, they're not going to leave any money on the table. If anything, they'll leave a few hundred, maybe $300 on the table. Nowhere near 1,000 or more. I'm going to show you that you can leave that much money on these slates and still have a good lineup and still set yourself up to win big. And they're not going to be fading very popular names, right? So fading a guy like Tom Brady is scary, right? But if he comes in at 70 to 80% owned, and I'm not sure if he will at this point, 13 days till the Super Bowl, but if he does come in at 70 to 80% owned, it sets you up to be in a position where if he doesn't do as well as he should, or he, God forbid, Tom Brady gets injured, or it's just a running game, or there's a defensive touchdown or two, or just a way for Brady not to maximize his ceiling or his floor, and he gets you only 15 points, whatever it might be on the Showdown slate. That might not be enough, and that's probably not enough. So if he's 80% owned, and just say it's a 100,000 person field just to work with easy numbers, that means 80,000 people have him. Even if Tom Brady gets you 50 fantasy points, which for a quarterback is basically impossible. But if he gets you, I'm just trying to prove a point. He gets you 50 fantasy points. You're still competing with 80,000 people, right? It's still tough. You're not, that blow up didn't do anything for you. But if he gets 15 points and he's not needed to win the Showdown slate, and he's 80% owned, and you don't play him in some of your lineups at least, now you're competing with 20,000 people. And maybe if you entered 50 lineups, some of those 20,000 are yourself, right? So you're competing with 20,000 people to win that top prize or split that top prize, right? It's much more, I would say, profitable to take advantage and lean into that uncertainty. That's what that PDF below is all about. The optimal contrarian is what I like to try and call it. and set yourself up to be different and win a lot more money when the certain things don't happen. A lot of people are going to think Brady's going to go into the Super Bowl and dominate. And honestly, based on his experience being there, based on the guy he is, based on the position he plays for fantasy, has a lot of opportunities to score points at the quarterback position. He honestly probably will be needed in that final lineup, right? But I'm saying, if the uncertain happens, a defensive touchdown limits his upside to score another touchdown. A rushing touchdown by Showdown Michel, which he's been doing, limits Brady's upside to score more points, right? That stuff happens, or it's just a low-scoring game in general, and you don't need Brady and you fade him, you're in a big edge over the field. You're probably automatically cashing, and you have a decent shot compared to if you had Brady and he went off, 20% shot of winning the whole thing. So with that being said, let's look at the slate. Again, like I said, this isn't a first look. Lost all the audio for the last one right after it was over. Waste of 25 minutes of my life. That sucks, but we got a practice run in. Don't think I needed it, but whatever. We're going to work with it. 3 guys in the 5-figure range for the captain spot. Edelman. Edelman's a guy who, yes, he probably deservingly should be the most expensive guy. I thought maybe we see Brady or Goff in this spot. But Edelman is seeing double-digit targets on average since he's been back. He's leading the team, and he missed the first 4 games in red zone targets with, I think, right around 15. What you want in your captain spot, or what you want in any of your lineups, are guys who will see double-digit targets in the receiving game. Edelman does that. If it's a running back, you want to see 20 touches on the ground and at least 20 total touches by the ground and in the air, potentially 25 or more touches overall for a running back. And you want to see guys who have 2 touchdown upside. So that's why quarterbacks are popular captain options, because they can get you 2+ touchdowns. That's why running backs who get a lot of goal line work, Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley, Saquon Barkley, all these guys are popular captain spots because of, 1, their usage, but they could also get in the end zone. A touchdown's 9 points. That's a big bump if you have them in your captain spot, right? So 2 of them is 18 points. That's a huge bump. Edelman has that upside based on the fact that he's seeing double-digit targets almost every week, and he's getting a ton of red zone looks. Basically, the way the Patriots offense works is if they're going to be passing in the red zone or near the goal line, Edelman has a very good chance of seeing that. And another guy, $6,000, Rob Gronkowski, has another good shot of seeing that. Finally got back in the books. He didn't have more than 3 catches in 8 out of 9 of his past weeks. He doubled that with 6, made up for it, got 11 targets. And he's seeing 25% of the red zone looks in this offense. So it's basically Edelman and Gronk are eating up over 50%, 60% of red zone targets in this offense. And again, Edelman was out for the first 4 weeks. This is incredible numbers. So what did we see against Kansas City, a team that is pretty bad at defending just in general, but also over the middle of the field and against middle of the field and also against tight ends. The Rams aren't great over the middle of the field. Some of their power is in their safety help, of course, but also on the outsides where their corners are. Rob Gronkowski is going to be in the middle of the field. Julian Edelman is going to be in the middle of the field. This sets up nicely for both of them. You get Gronkowski at a major discount at $6,000. Brady at 10-6. Again, if he's 70 to 80% owned, I might outweigh the field and fade him in 50% of my lineups to set yourself up if something uncertain happens. I think he's the only guy who can get up to that point at 70 or 80% owned. I don't see it happening anywhere else. I think that Showdown Michel is going to see a lot higher ownership than he should. And I'll talk about Showdown Michel quickly because he's at 6,800, which is very manageable to get into your Showdown lineup, of course. He's just been dominating the last few weeks, right? His touches on the ground over 20, getting 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. I have so many biases. I wrote about it in the blog. Check out the blog. If you've been to the blog, let me know in the comments below. I appreciate if you guys can go there. Check out my written content. Also have a podcast, all in the description below. Showdown Michel at 6,800. He needs to get you 100 yards and 2 touchdowns on a standard slate where you have week 15, whatever it might be, a normal slate where there's like 8+ games, 10+ games for the NFL. He needs to do that for you to cash or for you to smash, right? But on a Showdown slate, he doesn't, and that's where my biases, I have to reevaluate them. I don't like playing guys who don't catch the ball in Draftkings because it limits them. A guy like James White, if he catches 5 balls for 70 yards, which is totally in his arsenal, 12 points right there without even considering his rushing upside. Now, he might not be a good example. A guy like Saquon Barkley, right? Going to get you 30 touches, probably 5 to 10 in the air, right? There's a wide range there. Showdown Michel not getting you any bonus points in that receiving game. He needs to get 100 yards and 2 touchdowns on a standard slate. And I just don't like playing guys like that or Adrian Peterson. But in these Showdown slates, it could be 13 points. It could be 100 yards and a touchdown, and that's all you need because there's so limited opportunities for players to go off because it's one game. There's usually 2 guys who go off in a game, if that. So Showdown Michel definitely in play, of course. Anybody on this slate is. But I still have my biases. I'm going to be rolling with James White. And since I made this video already, I'll throw him in the captain spot. James White, we saw what Alvin Kamara did against the Rams last week, right? Alvin Kamara had over 10 catches, over 100 yards in the air. The Rams couldn't defend it. The Rams really against the running back out of the backfield have been sneaky bad all year. They're pretty good against the run. They stopped Mark Ingram and Kamara on the ground. That limits Showdown Michel's upside potentially. James White, I think James White is going to be seeing, especially he's done it in a Super Bowl before, right, against the Falcons. He's going to be seeing closer to this. I'm not predicting him to see that. That'd be ridiculous. But I'm going to say he sees closer to 15 catches than 4. That can mean that he sees 8 to 9, which I guess that is closer to 4. But I'm just saying he's going to see an elevated amount of receptions and targets. I'm going to project him 13 days before the Super Bowl. 7 receptions. On 7 receptions on 8 to 10 targets. I think that's the potential he has. If they watch that Saints game, it's going to be tough for the Rams to kind of just automatically start in 2 weeks beating that pass-catching running back, and they're going to get a guy like James White who has that similar upside in the receiving game as Alvin Kamara. Maybe not as elusive, but he is just as good in the receiving game. So James White, captain spot, locking in for me. Oof. Next up here. So ideally, I'd like to fade Brady to show you guys a lineup where we're fading Brady, but let me just build sort of like a chalkier lineup, but also not chalk at the same time, and I'll show you why. Julian Edelman I love, right? He's at 10-8 though, so it's a little tough to get up to him if we're going to play a guy like Brady. I do think that Jared Goff on this slate is going to go on their own, right? Jared Goff at $10,000. People who see the game logs aren't going to like it. People who just say Jared Goff's name in general. When you price a guy like Jared Goff in between Tom Brady and Todd Gurley, who I think will be the 2 highest owned guys on the slate. Maybe you'll see Gronk get up there. But I think those 2 guys will be the 2 of the highest owned guys in the slate. James White also in that category. I think that Jared Goff comes in very on their own. And I think that in this situation, the way to beat the Patriots at least is to pass the ball. Now we have C.J. Anderson. We have Todd Gurley on the ground. Like I said, Todd Gurley might be highly owned. You got to see what happens here, right? We got 2 weeks. If Gurley starts practicing completely in full, it still doesn't matter for me. C.J. Anderson is cheap at $5,200. But C.J. Anderson's still seeing a ton of touches, right? Almost 40 touches in the past 2 weeks on the ground alone, 16 last week. Yes, he didn't do good against the Saints, number 3 DVOA rush defense. The Patriots aren't as good as the Saints on the ground. But I still don't want to play C.J. Anderson. I'm just showing you that Todd Gurley's upside is limited. If Anderson is doing well and at least moving the sticks, getting a lot of work, they feel comfortable about him. Gurley's definitely not healthy. I'm not sure if he'll be healthy in 2 weeks. I think he's playing through some sort of injury. I'm fine not playing Gurley in this type of lineup. If he comes in at 50+% owned, because a lot of the public players know Todd Gurley's name, they know how good he has been over the entire course of the season, maybe not recently, I'm fine fading that. If we're going to go for these wide receivers, we got Cooks and Woods. So there's interesting here for the Patriots defense. You're probably going to see Stephon Gilmore, number 1 rated PFF cornerback, go up against Robert Woods in another revenge game, right? Cooks last week played the Saints, who he started out with on a fast track, and he played extremely well. He's played them good twice this year. And now he's going to get, again, another fast track, and he's going to get up to go another revenge game against the Patriots. I don't like this situation for Cooks. Obviously, he's a big-time player. I'm going to stay away from it. And then you even have Woods, who in the slot's probably going to see McCourty, right? The Patriots scheme sometimes to put Gilmore on your best outside receiver. But if your primary slot receiver is also a number 1 receiver for you, or at least a top option, which Robert Woods is, you can see here. I mean, just averaging on the year close to double-digit targets, averaging close to 70 yards per game receiving. Robert Woods is a threat, right? He might be averaging over 70, not close to it. I don't know. But he is a threat, and I think that McCourty's probably going to get put on him. McCourty was on Keenan Allen, some other wide receivers in the past. So I'm fine staying away from Woods and going to a guy who, in Josh Reynolds, is going to be facing the number 3 option out there. He's cheap at $5,400. We saw this past week. The Patriots are good against number 1 wide receivers, right? They're actually one of the top teams defending the number 1 wide receiver. They stopped Tyreek Hill last week. Against the number 2 wide receiver, they're actually a little bit better than middle of the pack. They're closer to like that top 10 range. Last week, they probably classified Travis Kelce at number 1. If not number 1, they flip-flopped him and Kelce, and they limited him for the most part. Got in the end zone, but no real damage. That left Sammy Watkins, the number 3 option, against their number 3 option on defense. He went for 100 yards. Yes, 4 catches, some big plays, but over 100 yards. I think that Reynolds is going to be in that position. He can catch a jump ball. He can go deep. He can also go intermediate. $5,400, I like him. We mentioned Gronk, right? Gronk's just the routes he's running are pretty good. He has a good matchup. Potentially getting Gronk in this lineup is nice. He's seeing 25% of the red zone target share when they're throwing the ball. See what happens if we put Gronk in there as well. If we're going to go down to the value range, Higbee is interesting, and Everett. People have been loving Everett all year. Higbee has been running twice as many snaps. Maybe Everett's a better pass catcher. Higbee ended up getting in the end zone. They got the same amount of targets last week with 4. But Higbee is seeing more snaps, so something to keep an eye on. The punt range, I'm not touching anything down here. If somebody goes off and a generator gets him, oh well. Lineup generated, that's fine. Defenses on a one-game slate, always in play. Kickers always in play, but they're not exciting to talk about. Really, at this point, there's not much I can say about them, so I'm not going to talk about them or put them in. So what do we do here? We got James White in the captain spot. We got Reynolds and Gronk in the flex spots. And you have $9,266 remaining per player. Let's throw in both quarterbacks and see what we can work with, right? You have $7,200 now, a good amount of money if you get both quarterbacks in there. So $7,200, you can fit a couple of different things in this type of a lineup, right? You can fit a Sony Michel at 68. People are going to have this lineup, though, because you only have $400 left over and there's over 300,000 entries. Somebody else is going to have this lineup. Let's see what you can do. You can go CJ Anderson. Not a lot of people probably have that. Philip Dorsett. I want to talk about Philip Dorsett and then also Rex Burkhead. But Dorsett, he's had 2 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks. I'll let other people look into that. He's had limited targets, 8 targets in the past 2 weeks, 5 receptions, only 1 catch last week. It ended up being a touchdown. I had a guy get in my mentions. I'm probably not going to go and find it and screenshot it. But I had a guy get in my mentions. I told him to play. He asked me somebody or Dorsett. I don't even know who he asked me. It was like Robert Woods or Dorsett. It was something ridiculous, right? Sammy Watkins or Dorsett. And I picked, obviously, the other option because Dorsett is barely on the field, right? He hasn't really done much. He's a one-trick pony. Dorsett ends up getting a touchdown, outplaying whoever he plays. I still made the right decision. Expected value over the long term. Those decisions will make me more money. That guy lost his horses. He lost some money. He said, oh, you blow. Which I do let you guys know. Everything I'm showing here is just me walking through stuff. I'm never saying use this. It's your money on the line. If you're just going to take my advice because of that when I'm not actually telling you to, that's on you. But anyways, Dorsett, I'll fade him. I'll let his ownership come up because people are going to see he scored 2 touchdowns, which you can't predict touchdowns. They're very variant, especially stretches like that. Going to come down, regress to the mean a little bit. So the guy below him at 3,800 I'll take Chris Hogan, who saw his targets come up, who is running with Gronkowski and Edelman. He's actually in front of Gronk in terms of snaps, but wide receiver slightly below Edelman, around 90% of the year, running that many snaps. He's had a down year just getting separation, but we saw 5 catches on 7 targets, had a pretty good game at his price point of 4,200 last week on the main slate. I'll take him at 3,800. So what does this do for our lineup here, right? Well, it leaves us $3,400 left over on this lineup, and you could do whatever you want here, right? If you don't like Hogan, by all means, play a kicker, whatever you want to do, right? Leave money on the table, however you're going to do it. You can come up to Sony Michel, to Rex Burkhead, who Burkhead was that punt play, and he had 16 touches, right? Some of those came in overtime, right? So maybe he only gets you like 12 touches, but seeing him get work is definitely interesting. They like to use 3 running backs out there. He took some work away from James White. I don't think it keeps up. I'll let other people see this, although, I mean, every game that he's played, he's been doing well, right? If you get 7 points out of Burkhead at 2,400, that's pretty good value. I'm going to be playing around with that more in the week. But as of right now, I'm going to plug Hogan in here and see what happens. So, we get a little bit of a recap here, right? Hogan, say what you want about him. He's sort of my punt play, whatever it might be, but he's on the field for 90% of the time. I don't think that's too much of a punt. He's getting targets out there. Maybe he'll get 5 targets. If he gets in the end zone in a game where there's probably not going to be 8 touchdowns. If he gets, maybe there will be 8 touchdowns actually, but if he gets in the end zone once, he's a smash play at that price. Whew, that was a lot. Shooting this for a second time. Got to take a little bit of a breath there. So, let's recap this lineup. We got James White at the captain spot. Probably going to be highly owned, but I'm going to put him in there because he's a stud in the playoffs. He's done it before in the Super Bowl. He's going up against the Rams, who just gave up over 100 yards in the receiving game to Kamara, over 10 catches to Kamara. They're not great defending the pass. Tom Brady hasn't been going downfield quite as much in this past year. Over the entire year, he hasn't. Lower ADOT in his career, lowest of his career. James White is going to be a primary beneficiary of that. Put him in the captain spot. He has 2 touchdown upside. He scored 2 touchdowns in a game multiple times this year. Throw him in there, see what happens. Rob Gronkowski, on the field for 90% of the snaps, finally came alive. Potentially his last game ever. If they win, I can't see him not retiring with this Super Bowl. Back-to-back Super Bowl champs. So, or 3 Super Bowls in a row, 2 out of 3 Super Bowl champs. So, Rob Gronkowski, $6,000. He's a good price range. Then you get Tom Brady there. So what you're doing here is you have 4 Patriots in this lineup. One of them is the facilitator. All of them are in the receiving game. So you're kind of banking on a game flow of the Patriots passing the ball a lot, which the Rams do stop the run. So this is a decent situation where you can get a good spot. Now, we don't have any Todd Gurley. We're fading that, but Todd Gurley and CJ Anderson do have an elite matchup in terms of their offensive line. Probably going to be able to get a push against the Patriots defensive line. We'll look into that later on in the week. Right now, on first look, I like this type of lineup. You get Josh Reynolds, who is probably going to have the best matchup against the Patriots' number 3 option, which all year long, wide receiver 3 or option 3s, depending on how good the tight end is on your team, have had success against the Patriots' 3rd wide receiver. I see Cooks being shadowed by Stephon Gilmore, PFF's number 1 cornerback, and I see McCourty coming into the slot where he has come against good wide receivers, which Robert Woods is a good wide receiver. So Reynolds leaves a lot for him. could have a Sammy Watkins effect like last week, 100 yards, whatever it might be, should have a good game. Then you get both quarterbacks who are going to get exposed to at least probably half the touchdowns in this game, if not more. I like that a lot. I like that situation, having both quarterbacks, having that upside a ton. Running back with Chris Hogan. Here's the thing. $3,400 is what we're leaving on the table here. $3,400. Public players aren't going to leave anywhere near that on the table. Most people won't. It sets you apart to at least win a lot of money if this lineup hits. And it's also a viable lineup. I like it a lot here. We're not really fading anybody big. Maybe Todd Gurley, maybe Edelman. But I do like what we're doing here. We're still playing good players. You can argue that Hogan's not a good player, but I think in this situation on a one-game slate, you have to make a stand somewhere. I'm going right back to the well with Chris Hogan. I should have lower ownership than guys like Dorsett and guys like Burkhead in that range, with similar upside, I'd say. So that's my lineup. If you're still watching at this point, or this is my first look lineup, not my lineup. But if you're still watching at this point, drop down below that you're watching. I want to thank you so much for watching 20 points at this point. My camera's about to die, so if this video doesn't make it up, and I filmed it twice, I'm going to be pretty annoyed. So I'm going to end this video right now. My name's Sal. Best of luck, everybody. More content coming this week for the Super Bowl and also Daily Fantasy NBA. Peace.